Hi, I'm Alex Moxon and I'm the director on Our Blood is an Ocean.
Hi, I'm Jack Sanderson Thwaite and I'm the writer on Our Blood is an Ocean.
But yeah, did you guys enjoy doing the filming for, well, I mean, it's different than normal Fringe, isn't it? Did you like it this time or was it stressful?
And personally, I loved it. I mean, I've never worked in that way before, and it really gave me kind of an opportunity to explore my practice like more digitally. And I think Jack's script was so brilliant in that it adapted with so much ease to kind of a digital format that made the process really easy as well, because we didn't feel like we had to do much to the script to get it kind of online ready.
Yeah, I was going to say it looked almost as if it was always going to be for film. Like you couldn't see that it was going to be, that there was any changes or anything really. It just kind of like felt very naturally into that. Was that always like, was there an intention to have that mix or?
I suppose, well, the script always had sort of direct address, like it's very much delivered to the audience, and that kind of felt like a sort of natural fit for that kind of webcam format. So before we started, I sort of went through the script and made some tweaks to kind of bring that out a bit more, or change bits that were sort of more directed to what it would be like in the room. And then that just felt fairly natural. And then obviously with the editing and stuff, we kind of were sort of discovering ways to sort of stitch it all together in a kind of that tried to maintain that kind of sense of liveness without making our actor do it entirely through the whole time, which would be quite a challenge.
Yeah. How was rehearsals? Were they done like over Zoom as well, or?
Yeah, they were all over Zoom. So, and as well, we'd worked with an actor previously on the piece when it had its kind of R&D development stage, but that actor wasn't available to do the kind of the Fringe. So for me, it was very difficult, and for Jack also, because we were working with a brand new actor, and it's very difficult to kind of build a relationship with someone you've never worked to over Zoom, and get them to a position of trusting you to guide them in that kind of way. But I think when we did have a very small audition process, and that was via Zoom as well, and it was very clear, I think that Jake, the actor that we went with, was kind of, he had already an understanding of the character, and it was clear that he was the closest to what kind of we were looking for. And I think we just generally just had quite an easy rapport straight off, which is something I don't usually look for, because you can usually build that, but online you can't. So I think having that straight off is really important.
Do you think like you'd carry on doing more digital now that you've done it, and like rip that plaster off? Like, do you think, I could do more like virtual stuff now?
Well, there's sort of two parts to it, I guess. I definitely, through the process, I kind of taught myself how to use Adobe Premiere Pro, like the editing software, and I learned a ton of stuff that I kind of feel like I would like to put that knowledge into practice again. I think sort of project-wise, we've already sort of vaguely started talking about some other kind of work that we might want to do, that I think, again, is sort of like a halfway house between both something that works digitally, but then also has either the potential for, or like a sort of post-show physical element, which is quite an exciting sort of blend of things. So yeah, I think having had this experience, that sort of made that sort of idea feel more viable. Would you agree, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. We like Jack said, just to echo, we're talking about another project that we could maybe do online. So we have become much less intimidated by it, and have seen how the value of it as well, which wasn't always clear from the outset. I think just from a director's point of view, it's always nice to work in a rehearsal room with people. So maybe doing something online doesn't feel that intimidating anymore. But in terms of rehearsal, I'd love to rehearse stuff in the room, even if that meant that it was going to be filmed to then go online. And where possible, government guidelines are changing, but where they permit and allow for a sort of safe in-person rehearsal, that would be that would be really great, I think.
What were like the most challenging things, do you think, of doing it virtually?
Probably just building that relationship with the company, I think was hard digitally. And also I like to work in a very physical way, so I have a dance background, so for me not being able to necessarily work very physically and be kind of having to work through the text was really great, because it asked me to kind of change my process a little bit, and I've definitely learned from that and hopefully grown from that as well. So that was my biggest challenge, was the relationship building and the change of process, which is good that you should always push yourself out of your comfort zone as well, so the fact it enabled me to do that was brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, sort of similarly, like as a writer even, I like being in rehearsal rooms as well, and you can sort of explore the text that way, but it still felt like we were able to be quite thorough on that respect. I suppose from a like technical point of view, it was harder to estimate like things like run times. Like obviously we found that once we had a final cut, we actually needed to cut it down fairly significantly, which is obviously, whereas when you're theatre and you're sort of running it a few times, you've got a closer sense of how long it's going to last. And I think, yeah, there were some things that we had to kind of think about in terms of like camera placement and lighting and things like that you're kind of exploring for the first time, in terms of like when we had stuff on the back wall and things like that, in terms of what people can see and like what your sort of camera quality is like, that you don't really know, especially when we were just recording from Zoom and things like that. That was a new process as well. So yeah, I think there's sort of new technical information that we sort of.
And actually, just to jump in there, from a set design point of view, we're kind of working with the room, the space that the actor had. Yeah. So we have to expect that we don't get a real say over that, in terms of we can make little changes, but that we are kind of quite constricted in what we can do from that side. Again, that kind of makes it really interesting, because and we were lucky that Jack's script is about one person in their room at home, so that made it quite nice and easy to accommodate. But yeah, there were challenges definitely with the kind of editing down, and we found that we were having to record on day one of rehearsals, which is I made the kind of comparison that it was like going on day one straight into a tech that's kind of where we were at. So that was difficult for us all to get our head into, but after the first afternoon, we kind of were able to rattle through it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because there was a candle, wasn't there? And then with the like non-verbal like movements and like drawings and etchings on the wall and everything, was that already scripted and you already had quite a clear vision for that, or was that worked around with the actor more to see because obviously I suppose with lights and everything, and then with moving back, it must be quite tricky to know, especially at the time of filming, whether that is going to work definitely or not. Yeah. Was that something like challenging, or?
Because originally that was on the floor and it was like a chalk circle, so we had to move the wall. So and also just kind of it felt like more like directing TV, in that you have to look at kind of continuity. So you have to think, oh gosh, that's where the candle was in the last scene, that's where it has to be in the next scene. It's kind of thinking about that as well, which is obviously not something that you have to think about when you're directing something live. Things end up where they end up, and that's kind of how it happens. But yeah, so we already had the drawing, and we already knew that Jack had already written in the stage directions that there were these moments where the actor would kind of frantically draw and scribble things down, but that was just lifted from the floor to the back wall when we did it.
So if you could go back to before you started filming, is there anything that you kind of like suggest to yourself to make anything easier with hindsight, or do you think you all did it as best as you could, or?
I think anybody would tell you just a longer rehearsal process is always useful. I think when you're we weren't sure really what to set our rehearsal time as, because we'd never done anything online before. So in theatre you have your standard sort of rehearsal length, then you have your week of tech, then you go into show. We were kind of reinventing that a little bit, and we had to work around the actors' availability, and which obviously during lockdown is usually quite good, and our availability, which was usually quite good as well. But I think more rehearsal time is only beneficial to the piece, and allows the actor to feel much more grounded in that character. Having said that, I think that Jake did a brilliant job, and he had a natural instinct for how the character should behave. So yeah, I think probably I would just look at the rehearsal schedule and make it a bit longer. I think we all underestimated that Zoom rehearsals might take slightly less time because you're not in the room with them. So we thought it would take a bit shorter, but then it was required. Yeah.
And yeah, editing time as well took a lot more. It was quite intense.
Amazing. I mean, I don't have anything more to ask, I don't think. Do you have anything else that you want to add in at all, or?
I just like to say thank you for accepting the piece to the festival. It was a real honour to be part of a kind of online festival that was very kind of leading the way in terms of theatre during lockdown. And when so many theatres had to shut their doors, it was really great that Plymouth kind of took up the baton and carried that responsibility during a really difficult time. So I'm really grateful that you provided a space for artists to be experimental and potentially to make mistakes, because it's a new format. And so thank you for the trust that you put in us to be able to deliver something. That's really
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we got very empowered by your confidence.
Yeah.
Oh, anytime. I mean, thank you for being involved. It wouldn't have worked without anyone doing shows, so thank you for putting your trust in us as well.